So who would play a witch? Who wouldn't play a witch? What do you do with a witch as a GM? And what does the witch offer you as a player and or an NPC? So, who plays a witch? Someone who wishes to be a support character, I believe, within the role of the party. That is the best answer. You would be playing a prepared spellcaster with a familiar with a tremendous amount of flavor. You would use hexes, curses, that type of motif to affect the outcomes of combat where you don't actually roll a lot of dice. Your opponents roll saving throws pretty much. So why wouldn't you play a witch? You want to make your own attack rolls. You want to be more beneficial in... oh, wait, let's back up. There's at least one more thing. So the skill set, the skills, the abilities for witches to learn and do things like crafting are really, really good. So if you want to play a crafter, this is another option for you to play a crafter. Now, back to why you wouldn't want to play a witch. You want to be in control of your own attack rolls. You want those kind of direct results. You do not wish to be a support character, and maybe you don't want to be a spellcaster. Just put that on the floor. But witches are pretty unique. And one of the reasons why they're really, really unique is because of what they have done with patrons. Witches are granted their magical powers by the patron. This is done through omens, dreams, visions, and we'll come back to that in a minute, but the familiar is really the contact, the vessel, the source, the divine channel, however you want to look at it, for the magic that a witch knows, possesses, and learns. With that being said, that makes them a great tool for GMs. The things that you can do with a familiar and a witch and stretch your story to use and guide the story and your characters is really immense. And like I said, we'll come back to that in a minute. Having a witch in a familiar can lead to a lot of different role-playing opportunities. And the first one that comes to my mind is the way a witch... is connected to their familiar and how they learn spells. And that's just one example. There's a lot of things that the familiar does. The familiar can learn spells from other familiars and things of that nature. But more importantly, I think one of the things that can happen is for a role-playing opportunity, and this from what I read, takes some liberties with the rules, but it's for story and fluff. So you've got a party that just comes into port, and you've got a rogue that goes out and does some research, blah, 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 and does not do so well on their skill roll, so the research that you wanted to come back doesn't really come back that well. You can use the familiar to give the witch extra insight or knowledge, basically the familiar, let's say it was a cat, because that's, so traditional in motif, right? Went out and was walking around an alley and just happened to be at the right alley of a pub at the right time, and the information the players need falls into the familiar's mind. Familiars are a gift from the patron, making them more powerful than other familiars, and we'll come back to that as well, but because we aren't done with patrons yet. Patrons are kind of, if you were talking about them in reality, patrons parallel faith in the way that, when I say that, I really mean, like, if you have a particular doctrine that you follow, patrons kind of parallel that kind of discipline when it comes to following a religion. So you're following your patron, you're following patron within this set of parameters, but it's a role-playing game, so it's not as restrictive as your faith may or may not be, depending on how faithful you are. And likewise, you can play that into a role-playing game. So the patron choice determines the spell list, grants you your lessons, and your familiar's abilities. So think right now, well, there might be more because I started with just the core rulebook, and I'm a little bit behind with my work because of my work schedule. But there's 7 basic patrons that are out there right now, and I think my favorite is currently, shoot, I don't remember the name. I didn't write it down. Is oh yeah, no, I did write it down. Faith's Flamekeeper. I really like Stoke the Heart, which is a hex cantrip, and oh shoot, well, I didn't write down what it does, and I didn't write down the page number. But anyway, you can look up Stoke the Heart, and I like the Familiar's Restored Spirit ability, which is another hex that they can sustain on one willing creature within 15 feet of the Familiar. Gains temporary hit points equal to 2 plus half your level. So I think that is pretty good, especially as a support role. It's almost cleric-like. I've got to look up Stoke the Heart now. And while I'm doing that, I'll just keep chatting away. Stoke the Heart, cantrip 1. Your patron fills creature with fervor, empowering the blows. Target gains a +2 status bonus to their damage rolls. Anytime you can give extra damage for pretty much free, I mean, it is one action to cast it, but pretty much free, and the duration is a minute, that's going to last pretty much all of combat. Now, with that said, it's heightened. +2. I like it. So the rogue, he's flanking. Oops. It's not flanking anymore. Sorry, guys. It gets extra dice and extra damage. Okay. With that said, we are going to come back to familiars now. Familiars are better, as I mentioned before. And there's a wide... We already know there's a wide variety of familiars, but they get 2 extra abilities. One is based on the patron, and one is selected daily during daily preparation. And that is a theme that follows throughout the whole Witch. And then the familiar gets new abilities at 6, 12, and 18. There are other feats. There are feats throughout the Witch class that you can take and buff your familiar. I'm not sure that's the way I would play a familiar, a witch. But if that's what you want the familiar to be your focus, that's the way you can. That's one build path you can go down. Familiars are the spell book for witches. I think this is neat because the familiars are actually the ones that learn the spells of the tradition that's given to you, granted by your patron. And you can do things like learn new spells that are on your list by eating a scroll. It takes an hour, but I think it'd be funny to see something chomping down 5 or 6 scrolls all day and learning new spells. And they are undying, which means if they die, they eventually come back. I don't remember the time frame, but that's kind of neat. And I don't remember if there's any penalties. So now, moving on to visions, dreams, and things of that nature. So let's talk about that before I kind of forget and get off track. Visions of dreams and omens can be a GM's greatest tool, or they can be a disaster. The first thing that comes to my mind is you have to be careful that you're not forcing or making the players feel like they're being forced down a particular path. I mean, anytime you're trying to do something, it is to a degree where you're trying to direct your players into a particular... It is somewhat railroading. But getting them to make the decision alleviates all of that, and then they're not really railroaded. And you don't have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops to find out how to get back to the antagonist at the end, because they went to a different town. So it could be good. that can also be a guide for the whole party, especially visions and dreams. Now, an omen, on the other hand, omens are kind of big, they're mighty, they cause, they should cause stress and turmoil in the character, and somehow that reflects out and causes, I don't want to say, not conflict, like, you know, they're fighting with each other, but conflict within story and tension that the players should realize their characters would take part in. A good example of that would be something like an island city, a small city or something, sinks into the ocean because you didn't do something. Or a good example for a dream would be basically a formula. So you have a dream, and in the dream there's a hook and a line, but the sinker's not attached. So you give them two parts of the formula so that they're intrigued and they want to go bite it. Or you just swap out your original hook and give them new direction with the bait that points them in the right direction in a slightly different way. And there's a lot of different things that can be done with that. You can drop clues to a particular location, like the witch dreams about a door and opening it, or the door is magically glowing with a ton of energy. You could be the picture of a city, a sign that leads to a city. A lot of little things. Some of them could be blatantly obviously, like a road sign, but always do it like, well, the players knew they were going to go to Despia, but they're at a crossroad and there's two different directions they can go, with Despia being the largest of the three signs, so that they still have a choice to make, and they have to make that choice. Now, before getting into spells and hexes, I'd like to share some of my ideas for how I want to use a witch. First, as a PC, I really think one of my next characters is going to be a witch that at level 2 dips into investigator. So you've got the intelligence base of the witch and the intelligence base of the investigator. I think you could do a lot of crazy stuff, and I think the crafting on this would be off the charts. Once you get to level 8, you can use the investigator's ability for focusing on increasing your skills, so you kind of have a skill monger with the witch. You can focus on some kind of specialty area for investigation, like the occult, and I think it'd be solid, especially if you build your character up around a lot of the different lessons, and maybe you make the character a little bit more towards the intuitive side of things. I'm not saying like a psionic or a psionicist, but I'm saying I think that, and with maybe dive into charisma a little bit for diplomacy and deception as the investigator, so you have a higher charisma than you do the other things, and you support the party in a much more role-playing fashion. Likewise, this character would also be a great NPC. And with that said, I plan for my game world creating a covens, all kinds of different covens. There has to be at least 3 in this. There are always going to be some kind of clan with a certain amount of rules or guides. The one that I want to make the most, so I want to make one that is kind of just like an occult coven that is very like tuned into fortune telling and stuff. So maybe they'll be witch dipping into oracle, and that'll be like what the whole coven focus. Well, obviously the whole coven, and not everybody in the coven can do that. But and then the other coven I want to build is really kind of inspired by Star Wars a lot. I want to do something not as crazy as the Witches of Dathomir, but something that is very playable like that. So maybe finding a way to dip a martial class in with the witches that is effective. And those are the first 2 covens. And then just witches in general as NPCs. You can have them all over the place as... I already plan on using oracles as like diplomats in a game. Oh, the other thing about the witches in my world too, they're going to be kind of very secret society. because magic is a thing that isn't dead, but it's long forgotten, and they don't wish to be persecuted. That's that. So they're going to really enrich my game world, and I hope that gives you some ideas for how you can use witches. I already said that part. Witches will represent deep union. Yeah, they're going to represent a very deep union and connection to magic in my world. Spells and hexes. So hexes are really kind of brilliant. They work the same way as spells. And with that said, they're gifted to you by your patron. You can only use one hex a turn. They're a type of focus spell, which costs 1 focus point. I think every single one of them only costs 1 focus point. They're heightened to half your level and no spell slots. They're also tied to several different feats. The 2 that come to my mind the most are basic lesson and greater lessons, and these are lessons you can take. I think it's at level 4 and level 6, and then you can repeat it over and over again to get more hexes until you've learned all the different hexes. Actually, I don't know if it's possible for you to learn all the basic lessons and all the greater lessons. I don't know if the feat progression allows it. Hex cantrips, and these are just wow, man. These are wow. So they're all 0 focus. Still only 1 a turn, but no limit to how many a day. They are limited in the sense because they are tied to your patron, so they have to be off that particular spell list. You can only cast 1. I said no more than 1 a day. No. Only 1 a turn. You can cast them over and over as much as you want because there is 0 cost. They do not require focus points. Amazing. Amazing. I should have picked one out as my favorite and I didn't. Feats. So, I already talked about lessons. Lessons are quite possibly the best 2 types of feats that you can take as a witch, and it's at level 2 and level 6. Each grants the witch a new hex and a new spell for your familiar. Which lessons? Hey, they're right here. So I'm just going to read the top one, which is Lesson of Dreams. Can be window to greater insights. You gain a Veil of Dreams hex, and your familiar learns sleep. So your familiar learning sleep at level 2 is, I think, pretty good. Because it works off of your spell DC, not the familiar's. Other notable feats. Cauldron. So Cauldron is kind of cool because you can create oils and potions as part of your daily prep. Cackle, it's just fun. You get the witch's laugh as a hex. Witch armaments. Okay, so witch's armaments are kind of neat, but they, in my opinion, they're kind of a step away from the flavor of the witch, which is using saving throws as how you do your damage and cause things to happen in combat and whatnot, because you get things like fingernails that are to protect you and things of that nature. Witches' armaments also leads into greater feats of witches' armaments. So sometimes they have a requirement of taking one of these before you can take another. So they do grow with you. Enhanced Familiar, it's exactly as it sounds. Of course, for those of you that may want to do that, it leads into a few other things. Ceremonial Knife. If I'm reading this, this is quite possibly the best feat for a witch. I don't remember what level it starts at. I am going to go through and take a look. I think it's level 4. It's level 6. At 6th level, during your daily preparation, you and your familiar can turn a ceremonial dagger into a wand. It's spell rank level 1. At 8th level, it can become more powerful, and at every 2 levels, it can become 1 step better. And when I say that, since I have it open, you can increase it every 2 levels starting at 8th level by 1 level. There is no limit to how many of these wands you can have. It doesn't say that they go away every day, unless I am a terrible reader, which that might be. Causes that function as a magic wand containing first rank spell. You and only you, and that's beautiful too, you and only you can activate this wand. Or the knife, I should say. It does not say that it goes away. It's a regular wand. So you can make, during your daily preparation, starting at 6th level, a 1st level wand every day off of your spell list. What were they thinking? At 8th level, it's a level 2 spell. Level 3 at 10th. There are so many support spells that you can use with this thing. It's not funny. Get a bandolier that carries daggers. What is it? Bandolier of throwing. You can have 10 wands. Okay, enough of that. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments, please. Yeah, Ceremonial Knife. Really, really good. Both Spirit Familiar and Stitched Familiar are feats that affect your familiar. Stitched Familiar, is that the one I want to talk about? Well, Spirit Familiar, basically, the spirit of your familiar leaves the body of the familiar. Stitched Familiar, you gain a striking activity that has a 66 slashing damage, and it works off your spell DC. Kinda cool. Coven spell is you react to an ally casting a spell, and you can give it a bonus to damage, or use a feat of yours that has spell shape to affect that spell. Like maybe you give it more range, or you widen the cone. Patron's Presence. This is really kind of good. It's a 14th level feat, I believe. Yeah, 14th level. Your patron directs attention to your familiar, and its presence becomes an ominous weight in the room. And basically, they have to take anything within 15 feet, a 15-foot emanation of your familiar, including yourself. Has to make a save against your spell DC, fortitude save, I believe, or become stupefied. I think it's 2. And the familiar can sustain it. Well, you can sustain it through your familiar. And then there's Patron's Claim. Just a really amazing feat. Your patron works through the familiar again. Familiar opens its mouth really, really wide, and it punches. It reaches out and punches something and does 10d10 spirit damage based off of saving throw versus your spell DC. I prefer using the tongue of the animal rather than punching it. Well, that's it for the feats. Those are the ones that I think are pretty amazing and out there. There's a lot of flavor. So, what do I think of the witch? I'm gonna start with what's kind of a good rant, because I think sometimes role-playing games and their creators get a bad rap. But I think Paizo has done a really, really good job remastering this class so that it's not a regular spellcaster, nor is it a druid, which I think there was a lot of too many similarities for that in Pathfinder 2, and in Pathfinder I didn't even really know what a witch was in Pathfinder 1. The fact that it relies on saving throws and other people's rolls, I think, really gives it that inherent flavor of the motif and the idea that I grew up with a witch, is that witches do things to affect other people. And I believe they have done that here. The twist that they did to make it a more playable character class, in my opinion, is they allowed for things to become positive rather than the idea that witches are always, you know, kind of evil and malicious and have bad intent towards the world. And they become support for their characters. As NPCs, they can become support for lords, kings, queens, guards, town guard, so many different things you can do with them. Now, for me personally, it is certainly not the kind of character I would normally play. And it's because I roll pretty well. I'm just okay at rolling dice, and I don't really want to rely on someone like the GM rolling dice for me. But I am very intrigued, and I am definitely going to pick and play a witch and use them in my games and my campaigns. I can't wait to see what the other books bring for the witch. This is the first time I ever did any kind of a deep dive on a class, and I'm not sure you can call this a deep dive. This is really just what stands out to me. And I chose the witch because it was so new, and I'm glad that I chose it because from a creator's point of view and a GM's point of view, it allowed me to take a look at the Pathfinder Remaster through eyes that I did not expect to see. I was not expecting such a big transformation with something like this, and I hope that I can take what I learned from this character class, the witch, and apply it to when I go through and look at some of the other ones. Hey, thanks for watching, guys, and have a great day. I hope you enjoyed this. Please like, subscribe, and share. Through Gamer Goggles is going through some changes. I'm splitting the channel and a few other things. I'm splitting the channel into miniatures and this and that. And I'm trying to get ready for Gen Con. I'm going to film another update here in a minute because there's some things that you guys should know before I go to Gen Con. And maybe I won't be at Gen Con, actually. Anyway, have a great day. Thank you. Hi, guys. Meet the Nibbles, who's gonna go down. She just decided not to go down my back, so we'll do this for her so she's comfy. Thanks for watching my video, and I appreciate it. Please hit the like button and share it if you know somebody who might be interested. And of course, there's always Twitter and the Facebook thingy, and soon I have a newsletter coming. That'll be down there or in a link below, and my kitty cat loves that idea. So anyway, there was one more thing. Oh yeah, subscribe. Be a part of my community, our community. Let's make it grow together. See you guys at a con somewhere, or a local store, or if I'm driving through the country, maybe a game club. I don't know, you're not going to go knock down my camera. Bye, guys.